Hey everybody, welcome to this webinar on departments and groups. My name is Katie. I'd love to hear from you. Introduce yourself, tell us where you're watching from, and just a little introduction about me. I'm at a church in Lansing, Michigan called Trinity Church. I'm the creative team leader there and help with the trainings for CCB for our staff. We're a church of just over 1,100 people. One campus, and yeah, so it's just my privilege to be able to walk you through how we do it with our departments and groups. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, but our way is not the best, but it's the one that works the best for us. So just want to give you guys some ideas and give you guys some recommendations on things that you can do to structure your database so it sets you up for success. Because really, if your departments and groups are confusing, that is just going to be a domino effect for the rest of your database and how you communicate effectively with people. So really want to be sure that you get this right. So let's dive in. Let's start with our group structure. So how the departments work in CCB is you have departments that are like your big buckets. And you can think of these like how your ministries are divided up, but you don't have to. I'll show you what we do. We basically follow our org chart, but there are two exceptions to it. So I'll go over that in a second, though. So you have your department, and with the department there, every department can have a department admin. You can have multiple admins. There's no limit to that number. But department admins have access to everything, all of the groups in that department. They're able to add groups. They're able to make changes with any of the groups, add events to the groups. And so that's department admin. The next level is department director. Now, department director and department coach are pretty similar, except the difference is department directors can oversee coaches. And what that looks like is you could have a department director or coach oversee a number of the groups within a department, and those are the groups that they have full access to. They can see the participants, they can add events, they can do whatever they need to, change settings, whatever they need to within those selected groups. Now, we change the names. You can change the name of director and coach. We call them rep and lead, but that was just because we use director as a job title, and so it was confusing to people. So you do have the ability to change those if you want. Lower down than that, you have one main leader, and that's the person in red on this graphic. And then the people in green, those are assistant leaders. Now, there's no difference in capabilities between main leaders and assistant leaders. The only thing is you have to have one main leader, and then you can have as many assistant leaders as you want. So there's no difference in capabilities, but you can only have one main leader, and you can have as many assistant leaders as you want. And then the gray person on this just represents the participants in the group. So this graphic just shows like the hierarchy and the structure of how the leadership works within the groups. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this. We don't use the department director, department coach probably as well as we should. We tend to just use the admin, and then we do use department director for specific ministries. But the advantage to using that is that using the department director and department coach positions is that your department admin can just send communications to just the people that oversee those groups. So it just kind of streamlines things a little bit there. So those are options to use. This is how our departments are broken down. Executive, gather, grow, group, go, next gen, and operations are our like ministry buckets. So those are our departments in our org chart. The neighborhood clusters and VBS and the blast are our two exceptions for using departments. For VBS and the blast, we have that separated out as a department because it's 14 groups, and we have a whole different volunteer team of registration volunteers that need access to every single group. And it was just easier to make them department admins and give them access to all of the groups automatically than going in individually and adding them and then taking them out and that whole thing. And sometimes that team changes from year to year. So it was just the easiest to do it that way. And neighborhood clusters, we have that separated out. That's a new thing that we're trying out right now. And so, because we're not really sure what department it's going to land in and who's going to be involved in it, it was just easiest to make it its own department and then add department admins for the people that needed access to it that are launching that initiative. So that's how we use it. We used to have an online engagement department that was a collection of groups that had to do with online engagement that we used during the pandemic. And we were building those volunteer teams. So we just gave them access to that department. But a couple months ago, we were looking at the departments in our cleanup rhythm and was like, hey, I don't think we need this as a department anymore. Let's move these into specific departments depending on the group. So that is just an option. This is how we use it. You really want to make sure that these departments make sense and that they are like the highest level. That is super important. All right. And be sure if you have any questions, put those questions in. I'm going to go into like children's ministry a little more specifically here when we go into group classification stuff. But if you have questions, put them in the chat. Be happy to answer them. So group classification. So you have your structure of departments, and now we're going to move more into how you can classify them. So group types is the one that is a custom field that you can make your group types any way you want. So think of group types as that high level view of what are the buckets that your groups fit into. And this is an example of what we use. We keep them super broad, as you can tell. Serve groups, any volunteer teams are serve groups. Outreach groups, those are more local global initiative type things. Connect, you can see those are our regularly occurring events. And activities are more like workshops, conferences, those kind of one-off things that we may do. Admins are those internal operation functions, and then Trinity groups is what are small groups. We call them just groups, but that's confusing to have groups in CCB, so we call them Trinity groups as the group type. Now, you may say, well, our small groups, we have men's groups, women's groups, international groups, student groups, whatever those categories are. How do you define those? And that's a great question. So let me share my screen here. And I'm gonna, if you go to the top right and click the gear, and then go down to customizable fields. This is where you can, over here on the left where it says groups and type, this is where you can change the group types. And you can add, I'm not sure that there's a limit to how many you can add. I wouldn't have too many though, but you can add them and then delete any that you need to as well. So how we handle the different small group categories is using the custom pull downs in groups. And if you click group category, then you can see these are the different categories that we have for groups. And I'll show you when we create the group how you can select that. But this is how we use it. And then if we use the group finder on our website, then you can select those things. So if you are a multi-site church, but you're using one campus in the database, this custom pull down area, I think, would be a really key aspect for you in categorizing and classifying your groups. I think that'd be really helpful to utilize. So these are our group types. The next stage of classifying that we use are naming conventions in our group names. So these are some examples of how we use naming conventions. So communities, get that, hospitality groups, Trinity groups, support groups, elementary and early education, early childhood. So these are just an example of what we use. They made sense for us. And how this looks is, let me switch this over. Oops. How this looks, you can see on the left, we have our community groups, and they just start with that CMTY : and then the name of that community. The same for hospitality groups, and then our elementary groups by grade are listed that way as well. Now, the reason that we do this is when we're doing a search or we're doing a mail merge, like let's say we're sending a mail merge to our hospitality teams, it is so much easier to type H : and then select, just going down in alphabetical order, auditorium host, celebration team, coffee team, going down, than having to remember, okay, we have the auditorium host, we have the parking team, we have the, it just keeps them all grouped together, and it just saves a couple minutes, keeps us from having to remember all those things. And, in ministry, there's a lot to do. So whatever we can do to save time is helpful. So this is one way that we do this. And this is something we use these naming conventions for our groups, for our mail merges. Even some of our forms get this, but forms can be a little tricky if they're public facing. But we try to use these naming conventions wherever we can. Schedules would be another one that we use them. So that is just a help. The other part with groups is with our classes, which you may, I would guess that you have classes or Bible studies of some kind, and probably reoccurring studies. So for us, this is just an example on the left, our emotionally healthy relationships and emotionally healthy spirituality class. So we have the emotionally healthy relationships is whatever current class is running. Though the participants in that group are in the current class. When they finish that class, we then move them to emotionally healthy relationships alumni group. So that alumni group is a collection of anybody who has taken that class in the past, and that is where they're stored. And then the emotionally healthy relationships is the current running. And then the volunteer team is up at the top, the emotionally healthy leadership team. Now, those, we're not really consistent in the language of those, whether it's a volunteer team or leadership team. It's whatever makes sense. But you can see the reason we do this is so then it prevents, this is a class, just as an example, this is a class we run 3 times a year. So instead of having to have an early emotionally healthy relationships September 2022 class, emotionally healthy relationships December to, like whatever it is, that's going to clog up the database pretty quick, and it just gets confusing about what group we should be using and the participants. And so this is the way that we've done it, where it's whatever class is current is in that main group, and then we move everyone to the alumni group when they've completed the class. And then you can see on the right hand side, this is how we do our children's ministry. So we have EC, so that's early childhood. That's our naming convention. So early childhood, infant, toddler, preschool volunteers are all in one group. And then we have early childhood nursery. So all the children go in there, and then preschool. Now, our classrooms, we do have for nursery, for example, we have, I think it's like 8 to 10 nursery classrooms that are divided up by month, but we keep them all in one group. And the reason for that is honestly just simplicity. Instead of having to move kids monthly in 2 different groups. We keep them all in one group, and then we have how our building is set up is the nursery is just all together, and we just have clear signage on what rooms they go to, and that seems to work for us. That might not work for your setup, but that seems to work for us well. And then in our data cleanup rhythm that we have, we move the nursery kids up into preschool, and then preschool into kindergarten, and then kindergarten into first grade, and then that's our group promotion process. Which, if you'd like me to go over the group promotion process, I can. How that works. Group promotion is where you basically set the database to automatically move your first graders to second grade, your second graders to third grade, your third graders to fourth grade. And you do that at one time. So it's moving the kids um, through that, like up their grades. That's a weird way to say it. But you can also do it for like moving all the emotionally healthy relationships participants into the alumni group, and it removes them from the first group. So it's a little quick tool. It's a little confusing, or maybe it's just a little overwhelming to be moving all those participants at one time. I always get a little nervous doing it, but I can go over that if that'd be helpful. All right, let's move on to group creation and what this looks like. Now, the key question to ask when you go to create a group, because a lot of times the groups that we create really could just be a save search. So you want to ask, do I need to do something with these people, or do these people need to be able to do something with each other? And the do I need to be able to do something with these people is more of a ongoing thing. Do I need to be able to do something with these people ongoing, repeatedly? And if that is the case, then let's share screen. Going to go into groups. Click groups on the left-hand side, go to the groups tab. And then if you have full group privileges, or you're a master admin, or you are a department admin, you can click create a group. And then you'll put in your name. So I'm going to create a hospitality team. We already have this group, but I won't save it. And then you can add a photo. The photo and descriptions are helpful if you are using the group finder for your website, or if you're encouraging people to log into the database, and then they can see the groups more easily, and they can have a photo and a little description. But if you're not doing either of those things, you can just leave those blank. Group type, this is going to be a serve group because this is a volunteer team. So childcare is not available, and I don't need to do anything. This is where the custom fields for your groups would show up. So, but this is not a small group, so I don't need to do anything with that. When and where, this only applies if your group is, if it's a small group, or it's a CCB group that's meeting outside of your building. You can see you can set the meeting day times, and meeting day and meeting time and area of town are all custom fields that you can change. So if your town is divided in a specific way, where with specific names, you could make that area of town instead of north, south, east, west, whatever makes sense for your context. So this page is super key if you're using the group finder for your website. So, and then options, the options tab. I'm just going to go through these things quickly. Email notification. This is almost always unchecked. Exceptions to that. So what happens is when someone is added to this group or removed from this group, an email goes out to all of the group leaders. So in some cases, that's super helpful. With small groups, that may be really helpful. But in most cases, you're going to have that unchecked because it just kind of gets annoying. Interaction types. So there are 3 interaction types of members interact. and announce only, and administrative. So you can see if I go to members interact, all of this stuff below change. So all of the group privileges are checked, the communication defaults, those are all checked. And that is because member interact groups are people can see that they're in the group and they can engage with other people in the group. Now, if I switch it to announce only, you can see all the group member privileges automatically defaulted to unchecked. So announce only is a person can see that they're in the group, but they cannot interact with people in the group. It's purely just to receive announcements. And then our last one, administrative, you can see the group privileges went completely away now, and it's an unlisted group, and this is purely just internal use. So these might be a holding tank that you use regularly. That would probably be the best example. So most of the groups are going to be announce only, and you maybe 50-50 depending on your purpose of using the church management system would be members interact. So we're going to keep it at members interact. And then you can, for membership type, you can choose, is this going to be open to all, which means that anybody can join at any time, or is it invitation or request required? So someone can select request to join the group, and then the group leader approves or denies them in the group. And then you can check if you want this listed. You can see right here, it says invitation or request required, but right here it says unlisted group. So that's just like a key to say like, hey, you said you wanted to invite people, but they're not going to be able to see it. So we're going to list this group, and then public search. This is for your group finder. If you're using this on your website, if this is a group you want to show up in that group finder, this box needs to be checked. Then we're going to go down here. So group member privileges. So this is just for group members. If you want them to be able to send messages, create needs, new needs lists, or upload files. Now, group leaders can do these things regardless. It doesn't matter if these things are checked or not. So this is just for group members. What do you want group members to be able to use? And then down here for communication defaults, you can change this depending. I typically, even if it is members interact, will just do emails sent from the group and text messages sent from the group, just because these weekly summaries are, I don't think they're necessary. But you may have groups that is a necessary thing to have. So that's totally your preference. Next, admin tab. You want to be sure that this gets put into a department. All of your groups should be in a department. No groups whatsoever should not be in a department. So it's very important. And then group participant limit. If you have a limit to your group, you should put that number here. Otherwise, if you leave it blank, it's unlimited. Month-old range. This would be if you didn't use, so like how we have our early childhood nursery as one group instead of the different months. If you didn't do that and you had it separated out like 0 to 12 months or 0 to 6, however the breakdown is, you could put that month-old range here. And then what that would allow is when someone's checking in, it would recommend the group based on the child's age. So you can do that here. This cross-reference save search, I just completely ignore. I haven't really found a great use for it, so I'd be interested if somebody has, but I have not. Approval groups, you're probably not going to have this checked. So approval groups are for event approvals, rooms, and resources. So how we use this, we have an event approval group that is for all of our event approvals. And then we have a finance approval group because we have some resources of Cashbox and that sort of thing that finance team approves or disapproves for specific events. And then we also have an approval group for our sports ministry. So those types of resources. So the bleachers and the sports equipment. that specific group of people need to be able to approve it. So that's how you would use approval group. So group leader privileges, and this is this is basically, let me uncheck that one. So group settings, if you want to allow group leaders to edit group settings, that can be super helpful. You would most likely want them to be able to add and remove group participants. Even if you uncheck this, they will still be able to approve or accept requests to join. So that's just up to you how you want to use that. Um, if you want group leaders to be able to update contact information, which is super helpful, you can check that, especially for small groups. Um, you're most likely going to uncheck this auto generate username activation link for group participants unless you want all of the people to like get that email right away typically, and that's if you want people to log into your database. Now you may just have one group where if they get added to, like if you do membership, if they get added to your member group, then they get that email right away and that activation email. Or if they join, like if you have a givers group where it's everyone who's giving, they get that email right away. And they probably already have it because they've created an account, but it would get the people that didn't. So that's how you could use that. We pretty much have this unchecked the majority of the time. Family reports. This is the group leaders have access to family profiles. And then church-wide events, this will automatically publish any of the group's events to your church-wide calendar. So this is super helpful. We have a group, we call it calendaring, and it's our church-wide events. So, our youth ministry is called Crosswalk, and Crosswalk, we have to have an event for every single group grade level so they can check in. And obviously, we don't want 4 different groups on our church calendar. So then we use the calendaring group to create an event called Crosswalk at 6:30 on Sundays. And then that is what shows up on our website. So instead of having to go in and publish every single event, if you just have a group that everything in here needs to go on our website, then you can just check that box and it'll automatically go. Event resources, uh, if this group needs to be able to request rooms and resources, you can check that. And then files being able to upload to this group. And then the final thing is your attendance groupings. So this is your full list of attendance groupings. And you just want to check whatever this group might need access to in event attendance groupings. So because this is a volunteer group, I'm probably not going to have events that they would be checking into as a participant. But I could see that there might be a special event or a community that they might need to check that that we might use in the future for events, like a volunteer dinner or something like that. So I check those. You don't really have to do anything with them. It's just what ones do you want access to? So when you add an event, you don't have the full list. You just have the ones that make sense for that group. So it just kind of makes things easier. So put in all of that information and then you hit save and that takes you to the group. And now within the group, if we had done a picture, it would have shown up here, but we did not. And your description would show up here on the right-hand side as well. And then the different tabs, I'll just go through these quickly. You can send messages. So messages are different from mail merges in the sense that messages are collected on this page. So you can see every communication that you've sent. Calendar, this shows the events that are just for this group. So because we did enable events to be made, I can create a new event. I'm not going to show that in this webinar, but in the future we will. If I upload any files, they would show up here, and you can also like star them so they appear at the top. They're more featured. You can do that. Needs lists, all of the needs lists that pertain to this can be done in this group. And then the full participants list can show up here. So, and this is where I can click here to go to my participants list to add new members either by name. Maybe I have a specific list of people that signed up on the weekend and I want to add them by name, or I want to do a search. So people who maybe it's a married group that you've created and you want to add everyone who's married. So you could do a search like that, or a specific gifting. You could add people that way, or they filled out a form and you can add them that way. So a lot of different opportunities there. Sorry about that. I'm going to go to edit participant list, which actually, let me go back on the main page. Up here at the top, there are different, this little icon on any of the pages shows the reports that you can run for the page that you're on. So from the main group, you have a lot of options, whether it's in the group participants category or the event attendance category. So that's on any page. Anytime you see that little icon, that means there are reports that you can run for the specific page that you're on. And then let's go to group action. So from here, you can see we can edit group settings, edit participant list. We can send all of the participants that login email, that user and password thing. We can record or edit attendance for this group. We can send a mail merge for the group participants, and you can print labels or name tags. Now, all of these things you can get to in other places in the database. Like I can send a mail merge from the communication part of the database, but they're all right in group actions as well. Now, I did skip send a twext because I recommend that you ignore this. You can connect this to your Twitter account. And you can also send if it's connected to your Twitter account, it sends a tweet and a text. That's why it's called Twext. So the text message, while it is helpful, like you can send a text message, the problem with it is the replies go nowhere. So you can send a reminder text, but if someone responds with a question, you're not going to see that. And so I would recommend not using this unless you're going to say in your text message, please don't respond to this or respond to this phone number and put that just for clarity's sake. But that's a downfall of this. All right, let's go to edit participant list. So from edit participant list, you can add or invite new people. You can change the main leader. So remember, there can only be one main leader, but you can have as many assistant leaders as you want. And you can add a department rep or department lead. So this would be department director or department coach. We just call them rep and lead. So what that looks like, we'll make Mickey Mouse the department rep, and then we'll make Flintstone our department lead. So then that's what that looks like. And then as the leader, as the group leader, I can see this and I can say like, hey, I had something come up. I need to contact my department rep. And so then I can click send an email and it will open my email service and send them an email. And then with changing the main leader, I say, actually, I don't need to be the main leader for this. I'm going to make Minnie Mouse the leader. You can see that has now set Minnie Mouse as the main group leader and switched me to assistant leader. Now, if it's like, actually, Katie should not even be in the leadership position for this group, I check the box and go up here to if checked. And I'm going to change my status to group member and hit OK. And so now I am the group member. And I would lose all of those leadership privileges. So that is the basics of creating a group. Let's go back, because how I want to end all webinars is going over action steps. And the first action step I want to encourage you guys to take is running 2 specific system reports. The first one being department summary, and the second one is exporting groups. So what this looks like, add this to stream, go over to the left on reports and metrics, and then be sure you're on the system reports tab, and then select groups. Depending on your admin privileges, you may have more or less options listed here, but click groups, and then it's this department summary. It's the first and the last report, department summary and export groups. So department summary, you're gonna click no department, hold shift and go to the bottom of your list, sort by department, and then I always do output as on screen first, just to verify that this is the report that I want and I'm getting the information I'm expecting. But you can also just select Excel, and that'll just immediately download the file. So it's like this: run report, and then you can see the file downloaded right here. And then same with export groups. You want to click the top one, shift, and so you can select all of them, and then run report. And that will, you don't have an option for that to show up on the screen. That's automatically going to download as a CSV file onto your computer. So those are the 2 reports I want you to run first. And then have Easter. Don't do anything. We're a week away. So just run those reports today and set them aside and wait till Easter. And then after Easter, block some time and take a look at your department and make any adjustments where necessary. Evaluate your group types. Do they each have a purpose? Are they too specific? Remember, group types need to be like zoomed out view of your groups. And then consider using naming conventions just to kind of speed up some of your processes. And then take a look at that group's report, and then does each group have a purpose? We look at our groups every 6 months, at the very least every year, but it's every 6 months typically. And I am always amazed how, even though we're regularly looking at them, and we tell our group leaders to also, our departments on an almost monthly basis, to be aware of what groups they have and inactivate groups they're not using. But even in our rhythm, I'm always amazed that there is still a number of groups that we're like, okay, those we no longer need, or we should combine these groups, or this is in the wrong department. We need to move that somewhere else. There's always those things that happen. So want to be sure that you're looking over that. And then just because I want to help you guys, if you run those department summary and export groups report and send them to me, my email is on the screen. It's katie@kriegelcoaching.com. I will send you back recommendations of ways that you could consolidate things and ways that you could group things a little differently, if that would be helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to have an outside eye, and totally for free. Just thank you for participating in the webinar. I will send you those recommendations. And then for everybody that does it, I'll pick one at random and we could set up a video call and talk through those. So hopefully that will be helpful. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. You can put them in the chat. We do have one. Let's put that up. If you archive a group, can you ever bring it back and use it again? All right. Yes, you can. So master admins and I believe the full group privilege. I have a little cheat sheet. Yep. So master admins and people with the full group admin privilege can view inactive or archived groups, and then you could bring them back. Yes, absolutely. Great question. If there aren't any questions, well, I'll give you guys a second to keep typing. Up next, so we're going to take a break next week because of Easter. And next time, our next webinar live stream is going to be about process cues. So I'm going to be talking about the top 3 processes that every church should have, what it takes to set up a process, how to move people through those steps, and then we'll probably touch on as well how we do how our church does VBS. So VBS in the summer is coming up, and our VBS is about 1,000 children, ages 3-year-old to 7th grade, and we use every single aspect of the database to do the registration. And I'll just share our process with you. So I may do that separate, but I think we can do it at the same time. So welcome, Melissa. Good to see you here. All right. Remember, fill out or do those reports. You can do those right today. Just do the department summary report, export groups report, and then send them to me. And I would love to send you back recommendations totally for free. And then I'll pick one of them that sends them to me. I'll pick one and we can set up a video call and talk more through the process. So that's for you guys. Let me see. Great question. So using the database, multi-site, but you're using it with one campus, uh, would you recommend using separate departments for children's ministry by site? Yes, I absolutely would. Um, and the reason for that is I would guess that you would have different teams that need access to that. Now, the one thing you could do, actually, I would just separate them. I think that would be easier. You can have too many departments, but I think it'd be cleaner for you to do separate departments. If you wanted to do it MC Kids as one department, you could utilize the department directors and coaches. But like if you had one admin person that's like overseeing all of them, depending on the campus, maybe you would do that. But I really think it would just be simpler if you did um, separate departments. And let me show you how to do that, because depending, you may have it already set up. So let me go to groups and departments. And then, so when you're in a group, you can easily go into group actions and group settings, go to admin, and then change the department. That's how you do it, switching them to departments, which we do this a lot. We just did a reorg of our whole church this past year, and we had to completely restructure our groups and departments because of it. So it does take some time, but you can do it. So, yep, great. Glad that was helpful. Thank you. All right. Well, that is our time. If there's no more questions, and I mean, feel free, email me. You guys have been doing great with that. So you guys can respond to those emails and then send me those reports. I'd be happy to give some recommendations, give you some outside perspective on how your groups are structured. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and praying for each of your churches as you head into Easter week. So it's a special week for the church. So praying for you as you're doing those final details and plans for Easter week and weekend. So I will see you guys in the Facebook group and at the next webinar. So thank you so much.